Hello and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I am Sint.
I am Axiom.
And we are continuing our discussion of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, as we play through... yeah, you did say you were going to die soon. As we play through Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Now, one funeral later... We talked last time about how, well, Hollywood often depicts the good but a little bit eccentric Dr. Frankenstein and his horrific creation, but neither of these things are really accurate. So, we mentioned this when we were talking about the characters and the plot, but this kind of deserves a little bit of a deeper dive because there's a lot to get into with it. But, Dr. Frankenstein, there is no such thing. There's not even a Master Frankenstein or a Bachelor Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein did like a semester of college before he got distracted with his own independent study and then had a freak out over responsibility and was unable to do more studies. Victor Frankenstein is an undergrad dropout. And I don't think that really gets focused on enough when people talk about the adaptations and everything to do with it. Because, when's the last time you saw an adaptation that didn't show Victor as, like, middle-aged?
Or as a dude with wild hair, wearing a lab coat, running around with a hunchbacked friend, calling him, "Yes, Doctor."
Yeah, I think one thing that people might notice when they read the book is that Victor spends a lot of the novel whining and not being sure how anything could be his fault. And there are a couple of reasons for this. One, there's a lot of speculation that Victor might be a little bit heavily based on Lord Byron, whom Mary Shelley would have been familiar with due to his friendship with her husband Percy, and Byron was special. The other reason is that, how old do you believe Victor was when he created his child?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
If I recall correctly, he was in his late teens.
19.
Nope. Strength rank.
So, knowing that this mad scientist was barely out of what we would deem childhood today, doesn't that just make it make a lot more sense that there were so many bad decisions made? So much, I don't understand how this could be my fault, even though everything was super obvious to anyone else around him. Because, yeah, he went to school for about a semester, so he went to school at 17 and then spent the next, 2 years working on his monster without telling anybody what he was doing. And,
My project, you can't have it.
Yeah. So, given the age range I teach, talking about, can you imagine doing this at the age of 17 is always really, really funny because, well, I usually do this with my sophomores, so 16-year-olds, and they just usually have this, look when they actually realize that, yeah, he's not a middle-aged scientist in a lab coat, he's some dumb college kid who, they know college kids. They know what college kids get up to. Some of their barely graduated older siblings are college kids, and they have heard stories from what goes on campus. So, knowing that Victor Frankenstein is about the same age as a college freshman away from home for the first time very much puts a vastly different spin on that tone. And it really contextualizes his whiny and irresponsible behavior. He's not the mature adult he wants you to think he is. So, yeah, there's a lot you can get into with this because, in addition to the fact that, you know, I basically dropped out of school, would act like I know more than my professors, just look at all of my research and, oh no, it's gone wrong, why didn't anybody stop me? There's the angle of, well, Victor is effectively, you know, creating a teenage pregnancy.
Oof. You're not wrong,
What?
but I didn't think of it that way until you specifically mentioned it.
He doesn't want his family to know. He's ashamed of what he's created. He's desperate that no one finds out. He tries to hide the evidence. He can't get rid of it. And it tears his family apart.
Tearing me apart.
To note, on our notes for what to discuss, our suggestion for this episode was Victor is a college dropout who won't pay child support. So we already had thought of the parenting angle, but yeah. And honestly, there's a lot more to say with the parenting that we can get into later, because it crosses more than just Victor and the monster, but for this I just really wanted to look at... There's a lot of... If you read the novel carefully, there's a lot of looking at the importance of age when it comes to, well, taking on this kind of responsibility. Victor mentions that his father was far older than his mother, and his mother did not survive being, you know, a caretaker. She was already in frail health due to taking care of her dying father, so when Elizabeth fell ill, she basically killed herself to keep her adopted daughter alive. And maybe it was just that she was young enough that she cared too much to let her reason weigh in, or maybe it's just a case of just tragedy happens because this is that era when we don't really have good medical treatment for everybody, and given that this is pre-Victorian, it wasn't going to get much better for a while because leeches and doing cocaine for feelings, because medicine was special.
I forgot about these guys. They are such a pain to kill.
Yep, looks like it. You are in pain. Meanwhile, his father was significantly older than his mother when they were married, and his father almost survives to the end of the book, but is also ultimately, you know, not the most attentive parent. So, I don't know. There's kind of a lot to say with regards to, is it just Victor's age that made him unready to become a parent, or was it his upbringing that made him unable to deal?
Ha! I made it. Oh, it's you.
Because honestly, this does come up when we discuss it in my class, and there's always the, at the age of 17, Victor decides that he is ready to create life. How many of you think you would ready to be a parent at 17 or 18? And there's usually just this dead, awkward silence in the room. Because that's honestly what the story comes down to, is Victor decides, I'm going to do this thing, but clearly has no idea of what he's getting into until it's too late to change it, and has no means of coping with it, especially because he decides to go into denial about the entire situation, because ignoring the problem will make it go away, much like a child playing peekaboo. Unfortunately, psychological concerns and, you know, physical harm do not respond well to a lack of object permanence.
So we have Victor, we have the monster. we have an underprepared parent, basically. I can't believe that worked. I hate these things. Is this really going to be this simple? Oh, it can
That's
do that.
what Victor said when he created life.
I didn't know it could shoot that close.
Purple plant, blue plant.
Red plant. And I'm gonna die to these things.
Yep. So, as a counterpoint to what I'd raised, I'm not sure that age alone, or even the upbringing here, would be the problem, because, well, we have a counter in Elizabeth. Elizabeth is Victor's age. Elizabeth had the same upbringing that Victor did. Elizabeth is a much more responsible and emotionally attentive person who has absolutely no difficulties in taking over the role of parent for her younger foster brother, William. So, we can argue about nurture and nature all we want here. I'm gonna say it's down to nature, because something about Victor, despite having the same circumstances, did not work.
Well, yeah, Victor very rarely did any work. At least when he could get away with it, unless it was something in his particular interest. That's kind of the problem.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm saying here is, like, being young does not guarantee that you will be irresponsible. Being young does not mean you are immature. Being young does not mean you're a lost cause and incapable of growing.
Yep.
Being privileged also does not mean any of these things. Victor and Elizabeth were both young and very privileged. But, as mentioned, Victor never had to take responsibility. Elizabeth rose to the occasion and did. So, yeah. Many factors involved here, and I wonder how much of that was just the expectation that, you know, women are naturally maternal. A stereotype that persists to this day, despite the fact that I am living proof that, is there such thing as a, like, you know how there's a green thumb if you're good at gardening and a black thumb if you're bad at gardening? Is there something like that for, parenting? Because,
I'm sure there is, but I don't know what it is, and...
yeah, let's just say that, I have that, because, no one wants me to reproduce. Self included. But I recognize this and therefore would not take the same steps that Victor did to, you know, put myself in a situation where my shortcomings in this arena would become all too evident. And it's not as though his creation is really being that unrealistic. All his creation wants is, can you pretend you care about me for 5 minutes? Please? I exist. I am a person. You made me this way. Can you acknowledge that I'm not just a figment of your imagination? Like, it's the bare minimum he wants, and Victor is incapable of even that. So...
In part because
Yeah.
Victor really wants him to just be a figment of his imagination. There we go.
Yes, but as many people are unfortunately discovering, a little bit too slowly in some cases, delusion does not have any effects on the laws of physics or thermodynamics. Victor might not want his science child to exist, but here he is, and he's quite capable of proving his existence by depriving others of it. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say from here.
I think that's a decent place to put a pause. And I can get
Alright.
my butt kicked by flies again. In that case, we will see you all next time.
Bye!